We're back, everybody. Ready
Nice,
to rumble.
Cold winter morning, afternoon.
Yeah, I like this. We're going to be drinking the Pie Hole.
The Pie Hole Porter. It's a cherry vanilla porter from Historic Brewing Co. This is from Arizona.
It's interesting.
You puckered. Your mouth puckered.
Yeah, I was just trying to take in all the flavors because I was getting a lot there because it's cherry vanilla flavored. Yeah.
And it's dark.
So, Thanksgiving just came around, Britton.
Sure.
Since we're talking about a pie hole or stuff in your pie hole, do you have a favorite pie for Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Pumpkin. Actually, I don't know. So, pumpkin, I feel like, is the pretty basic, like, everyone has
the
it.
basic Thanksgiving pie.
This last Thanksgiving, though, my aunt made a chocolate banana pie. It was really good.
Banana and chocolate actually go well together.
Yeah, like it was big, like slices of banana on the bottom, and then like a chocolate pudding on the top.
Sounds pretty.
It was
good.
really good.
Yeah,
but I also really love banana cream pie.
I'm not a pie guy. I'm not a pie guy. Sorry, that surprised me because I was gonna say I actually like banana cream because it reminds me of my grandma. We used to. She always have that at Thanksgiving when I was really young, and I haven't had it in like 10 years. But maybe one day I'll go to the store and buy one.
Oh, we'll just make you one. My wife likes to make them. We'll make one. Key lime pie is good, though, too. I don't know. Any pie other than rhubarb. I don't like rhubarb pie.
Oh, yeah. Key lime's fucking good.
Yeah. My wife makes it. She squeezes the lime. She makes the whole thing. Oh,
I thought we were a scary podcast. What are we talking
what are we
about
talking
today?
about?
What
Pie.
the hell is
I
going
like
on
blood
here?
pie.
Oh, Lord.
A big old bloody meat pie.
Iron.
I
Just like
love the
and
iron.
pennies.
Who are you, Dahmer? But welcome to the Abyss, everybody. So thank you for joining us. If you follow us on Facebook, it's that time of year where Spotify Wrapped goes out. And, of course, we get our creator Wrapped of the year. And 23 was a big year for us as a podcast. In fact, according to the statistics, 93% of our audience actually discovered us this year, which is huge.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Because we're going on our 4th year, 4 years in February.
And we're always trying to drive engagement. So, add us on Facebook.
Add us on Facebook. Full transparency, Cleet and I, we kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Hoe out?
Yeah, we hoe out. Cleet and I hoe out the responsibilities of our podcast. No, it's God damn it! Why is this word escaping me?
Trying to say.
When you take a certain responsibility, we
delegate.
Delegate. Thank you. God damn, we delegate certain spots of the podcast. So I do a lot of the Buzzsprout stuff. Cleet does all the YouTube. I try and take on Facebook, but Facebook, I'm not on it a ton anyway. So we drop the ball. But add us on Facebook. Comment, spread us out there. We really want to be as engaging as possible.
I feel like the more engagement we would get there, the more we would post there, right?
Yeah, of course. Because we've asked a couple questions, but again, full transparency, I suck at keeping up on it. But with our hope of getting video very soon, I think that's going to be a lot more engaging because you can see our horribly ugly faces.
No, your concave moon, waning crescent face.
But anyway, so yeah, Spotify Wrapped, and the biggest thing, of course, is we had 143 top fans, which means we were the number one listened to thing on their Spotify. So huge shout out to 143 of you who were the top. We really, really appreciate it. And there was actually 1,100 that we were in the top 10. So just absolutely amazing numbers that I personally never expected to see from a podcast that we had.
Yeah.
Which is really cool to see. So again, thank you very much for all the support. If you're the top, even if you're the bottom, if you gave us 10 minutes of your time, thank you very much for that. But this week, we're jumping back into our series, The Most Notorious Serial Killer in Every State, Part 6. So we're over the 50% mark. So this week, we're doing Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, and New Hampshire to round out Part 6. And speaking of series, obviously, we just finished not too long ago our Iceberg Theory, which seemed to be one of the most popular we've done. We've also done Urban Legends in Every State. But as you, the listener, if there's a series you want us to do, again, speaking of the engagement, write into us either on Facebook or entertheabysspod@gmail.com. We're always looking for series and ideas to keep everyone completely engaged because we know people like different things and there's a lot of spooky shit to talk about. So let us know what series you want to see next.
There's some good icebergs out there too, so let us know if you see any good ones and we'll cover it.
So we are going to jump right in to our next states with
Missouri. I'll be covering Charles Ray Hatcher. In May of 1978, the body of a 4-year-old boy was found on the banks of the Missouri River. It belonged to Eric Christian, who had disappeared from his home in St. Joseph, Missouri, not long before. The body showed signs of sexual abuse, and it appeared that the young boy had been suffocated to death.
That's fucking 10
There's
years
a lot
old.
of dark people out
4
there.
years
Man.
old. Ugh.
The St. Joseph police questioned every known pervert in town. Yeah, that's what they said. Like, literally. We talked to every pervert we knew. Before finally arresting Melvin Reynolds, a 25-year-old with an intellectual disability who had been sexually abused himself as a child. Over a period of months, Reynolds was subjected to numerous interrogations, 2 polygraph tests, hypnosis, and even the drug amibarbital, which at the time was considered a kind of truth serum.
Truth serum. Man, put that with the polygraph test and you've got 100% accuracy.
I feel like I would always fail like a polygraph test because like
They're so wrong.
if someone's like questioning you because they think you're guilty, I'm gonna get nervous.
Well, yeah,
and
it's
then I'll start
nerves.
sweating, and then like my heartbeat will go up.
And I think that's part of the tactic is they sit you down and they strap you to this machine
Yeah.
and everyone's going to be nervous.
You're guilty.
Unless you're like literally the person guilty who feels nothing. You're like, no, I didn't do it.
You're a psychopath.
Yeah.
Like I did not murder all those people plus this person you haven't found out about yet. Like, wait, what?
Excuse me?
Well, he's telling the truth.
He's telling the truth. He didn't do it. So you're saying there's people out there who have been murdered? Oh, hundreds.
Oh,
I
hundreds,
didn't do it, though. He's still telling the truth.
All right. Eventually, Reynolds broke under the pressure, telling police, "I'll say so if you want me to," which is just egregious and
Wow.
sad. Reynolds' subsequently embellished confession was enough for a jury to convict him of second-degree murder, for which he was sentenced to life in prison. Within 4 years, he was released, but this isn't the story about the criminal justice system failing to keep a dangerous predator behind bars or get him the treatment he needed. Or rather, it is, but Reynolds isn't that predator.
Dun, dun,
He was released from prison in 1982 because another man confessed to the crime Reynolds had been convicted of. That man was Charles Ray Hatcher, a serial killer who had been in trouble with the law since 1947.
Look, if your name is Charles Ray Hatcher, it sounds serial killery.
Well, anything with like hatchet, like it sounds like you want to hurt someone with like a blunt instrument.
My name is Spencer Bloody Knife.
Like, wasn't there like one serial killer or someone who killed his family with the last name Hacking? And it's like,
Probably. Saw that one
probably
coming.
should know this, but when he was arrested in 1982 while trying to check himself into the St. Joseph State Hospital, he confessed to 16 murders dating back as far as 1969. By 18...
Whoa.
Whoa,
The guy's old.
He's a
Holy
vampire.
damn.
By 1984... Damn.
We went 100 years back. Lord have mercy.
Hatcher had been convicted of 2 of those killings, both the death of Eric Christian and the murder of an 11-year-old Michelle Steele, who had gone missing in 1982. Like Christian, her body washed up on the banks of the Missouri River, showing signs of having been sexually abused, beaten, and strangled to death. Why you gotta go after the kids, man? It's not okay.
Well, when they get to prison, dude, they don't take too kindly to anyone doing things to kids.
Oh, yeah. One could hope. Hatcher requested the death sentence, but was given life in prison instead. 4 days later, he took the decision out of the state's hands, hanging himself in his cell at the Missouri State Penitentiary. So, probably because he didn't want to, be beaten every day by the inmates. Born in Mound City, Missouri, about 35 miles north of St. Joseph, Hatcher's troubles with the law started early on. When he was just 6 years old, he saw his older brother die.
Good God.
The boy was fatally electrocuted when the kite they were flying hit a high-voltage power line.
The hell?
Yeah, that's By the time he was 18, Hatcher had his first run-in with the law when he was arrested for stealing a logging truck from his employer, the Iowa-Missouri Walnut Company. By 1959, he's like, I'm taking the truck.
There's Ferraris, there's
He
Porsches.
just kept,
He's like, I
joking.
really want a
He's like,
logging truck.
One of these days, I'm gonna steal your truck, and they're like, "Oh, you're funny. You're it's like it's a good joke." And then one day he just takes it.
He's like,
"I'm
son of
fucking
a
taking
bitch."
it today.
I wasn't lying. I've really dreamt since a child of stealing a logging truck. It's on my bucket list.
All right, by 1959, at only 30 years old, he had already served 6 different prison sentences.
Fucking hell.
For everything from auto theft to attempted burglary to forging a $10 check. Within months of his 6th release, he was back in front of the jury, this time for attempting to abduct a 16-year-old, Stephen Pelham, at knife point. By the time he arrived at the Missouri State Penitentiary, not for the last time, Hatcher claimed to be one of the most notorious criminals in the state since Jesse James.
Wow.
Even while serving time behind bars, Hatcher seems to have remained a threat to those around him. In 1961, a fellow inmate was found raped and stabbed to death on the loading dock of the prison kitchen, with Hatcher, the only member of the kitchen staff, unaccounted for at the time of his death. Hatcher was placed in solitary confinement, but there wasn't enough evidence to formally charge him.
Good God, dude. This guy sounds like a real piece of work.
While spending time in solitary, Hatcher wrote a note asking for psychiatric treatment, but the prison doctor felt that he was just trying to scheme his way out of solitary confinement, and the treatment was denied. This, too, would become a recurring theme in Hatcher's life. Released in 1963, Hatcher confessed to abducting and strangling a 12-year-old boy in Antioch, California, in 1969. He spent the next decade in and out of jails and hospitals, with doctors often giving starkly different testaments to his mental state and competence. Hatcher was frequently considered to be faking or exaggerating symptoms in an effort to avoid culpability for his crimes, while at other times he was declared insane and diagnosed with paraphilia, pedophilia, paranoid schizophrenia, and more.
Wow.
He was committed to the California State Hospital as a mentally disordered sexual offender and diagnosed as a manipulative, institutionalized sociopath.
Lord, that is quite the list.
Can't believe I went through that sentence.
That was pretty impressive.
Blah, blah, blah. He also made numerous attempts to escape. One such incident occurred in March of 1973 when guards found Hatcher with 2 bedsheets stuffed into his pants, attempting a breakout. Throughout the years, Hatcher used a variety of assumed names and got in trouble for all sorts of petty crimes, as well as more serious assaults, and, eventually, the murders for which he was convicted. As he was bouncing from jail to prison to hospital to halfway houses and back again, Hatcher was also racking up other victims.
God.
In 1969, he was caught in the act by a man walking his dog who found him beating and sexually assaulting a 6-year-old Gilbert Martinez.
Jesus Christ. Look, if I were walking my dog and saw someone doing anything to a 6-year-old kid, that person they'd go missing.
Wood chipper.
It'd be bad.
Hatcher had abducted the boy with the promise of ice cream. Ugh. When Hatcher was finally arrested for the murder of Michelle Steele in 1982, he confessed to a litany of crimes dating back to the death of William Freeman in Antioch, California, in 1969. Several of these were already known to authorities, while others came as a surprise, like when Hatcher drew a crude map that led police to the body of a 28-year-old James Churchill, who was buried in the rocky soil of the Rock Island Army Arsenal near Davenport, Iowa. In total, Hatcher confessed to some 16 murders, though he was only ever charged with 2 of them. Given his history, he may have been responsible for even more. As terrible as his crimes were, almost just as terrible is how avoidable they seem in hindsight. Hatcher was a man who literally begged for psychiatric care, yet was seemingly ignored by the system. What's more, an innocent man spent 4 years paying the price for one of Hatcher's slayings, a sentence he would have no doubt carried out for the rest of his life had Hatcher not confessed.
That is crazy to think about. Yeah. This guy's like, look, I'll say that I did it if you want me to.
Well, sometimes it makes you think, like, when it comes to police work, how much of it is show. Like, they lock someone up to make the public feel better.
Yeah, like, we got the guy.
They're just trying to, slam a confession to someone that could be plausible.
Well, and to be someone in the chair that you didn't do it, and they're like hounding you. They got you on this machine. They're like questioning you, and you're like, look, this isn't going to end. Sure, I did it, whatever.
Like, for me, I don't know if I have a bias, but when I look in history, I'm like, yeah, that definitely happened. Well, but when I think in present day, I'm like, well, but maybe it is. Maybe it still happens. And that's probably why you should always have a lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
And plead the fifth.
Yep. I would like a lawyer, please. All right, let's move on to Montana with a man named Wayne Nance, also known as the Missoula Mauler. Wayne Nance was born on October 6, 1955 in Clinton, Montana. His father was George Edwin Nance, a long-haul truck driver, and his mother was Charlene May Nance, who was a waitress. They lived in a motorhome outside of Milltown, Montana, which is east of Missoula. Wayne was described by both his teachers and classmates as being academically gifted, yet eccentric, with claims that he was a juvenile delinquent. Friends of Wayne's made claims that during his adolescence he would boast of worshipping the devil, going as far as using a hot coat hanger to brand himself with satanic symbols. Yeah, it's just a normal...
mentally stable gentleman.
Sure. He also bragged about wanting to commit a murder before he was 19 years of age. He graduated from Sentinel High School in 1974. You know, you got people, it's like, you know what? I'd like to have my own car when I graduate high school. I'd love to go on this fancy graduation trip. This guy's like, nah, I want to murder someone before I hit 20.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
A murderer.
Like, excuse me?
Christ.
You mean like a carpenter? No.
No. Nance is believed to have raped and murdered a 39-year-old woman named Donna Lorraine Pounds on April 11th, 1974, in West Riverside, Montana. Pounds worked part-time at a Christian bookstore and on this day had arrived home around 3:30 p.m. It's suggested that she encountered Nance in her master bedroom, where he was armed with her husband's .22 caliber Luger rifle. He supposedly fired a warning shot into the bedroom wall. Nance at the time was wearing latex gloves, one of them being found at the scene. He was also carrying a black gym bag which contained a white clothesline, which he used to tie Pounds to her bed. It was here that Nance raped Pounds before forcing her down into the basement. When they got to the basement, Nance shot Pounds in the back of the head 5 times at point-blank range. He then disgustingly put the barrel of the gun into her vagina, leaving the scene of the crime. Donna's husband came home at around 6 p.m. to the grisly scene in the basement of his wife tied to a chair, shot to death. There were 3 eyewitnesses that came forward saying that they had seen Nance, who was an acquaintance of the victim's teenage son, in the same area around the time of Donna's murder that same afternoon. One eyewitness claimed seeing Nance in the Pounds garden, another saying they saw him leaving the house with the black gym bag, heading in the direction of Tamarack Trailer Park, where he lived with his parents at that time. More suspicious was the fact that Nance was a regular at the Pounds home, where their son had shown Nance where his father kept the gun he used. So, like, this is the hard part that I struggled with, is like, he was at their house a lot, apparently like an acquaintance with their son, right? And you just imagine, like, they're at home and he's like, oh, hey, let me show you my dad's gun. Pretty cool, right? To be the kid, like, to be the son, knowing what happened to your mom and that, like, you had, like, shown this person where the gun was and like knowing what had happened, it's just like that would be the worst thing to have on your conscience. I mean, not saying like he had anything to do with it, but like that would play in my mind hardcore. Sad, but I think that he had like made up his mind beforehand. Like I think it was going to happen regardless. But when Nance was questioned by the police, he admitted skipping school on that day, but had stayed home to work on a school project. He admitted to being in the area, but he was foraging for materials that he needed for the project. Right? Nice, good excuse there. Insufficient evidence had prevented Nance from being charged with Pounds' murder. However, years later, police searched Nance's home where they discovered evidence linking him to the said murder. Police suspected that Nance had been involved in other crimes during his time at the United States Navy from 1974 to 1977 while traveling for services. On November 29, 1977, Nance received a general military discharge from his conduct when found in possession of LSD, marijuana, and illegal butterfly knives. Not long after his discharge, Nance went to Seattle, Washington in July of 1978, where Devonna Nelson, a 15-year-old runaway, disappeared. On February 27, 1980, her badly decomposed body was found by a crew of a freight train on a road bank near Interstate 90 in Missoula, resting against a chain-link fence. Due to the poor condition of the body, the remains weren't identified until February 16, 1985. She had no shoes nor underwear, and her dress had been hitched up around her neck. Nelson was stabbed in the chest. Nance is suspected of killing Nelson, however, has not been definitively linked to the crime. The body of Marcella Sherry Bachman, or Marcy, who was 16, was found in an advanced state of decomposition on December 24, 1984, by a wildlife photographer. The body was found buried in a shallow grave with her decomposed leg protruding from the frozen ground. There was strong evidence that Nance was responsible for the murder, with hair similar to Bachman's being found in Nance's home. Bachman had run away from Vancouver, Washington, due to conflicts with her family. She had been killed by 3 gunshot wounds to the head, and Bachman was identified in 2006 through DNA profiling. Her cremated remains were subsequently interred. Bachman was seen alive with Nance, who had reportedly taken her in after being left by a trucker in the area. At the time, she went by the alias name of Robin and claimed to have been native to Texas or just passing through the state. When Nance was asked about her whereabouts, he would simply state, "She's gone," claiming she had run off with a trucker or that he'd put her on a bus.
Yeah, she went to a bus stop. Never
She's
saw
gone.
her again.
She's gone. That's it. Nothing to worry about. The grave was only 2 miles away from Nance's home, and he claimed she had left the area on September 28th of 1984, which was about the time she was killed. Bachman's brother Derek had been looking for her since he was 21, along with the help of a private investigator. The original belief was that she supported herself as a prostitute and may have become a victim of Gary Ridgway, the serial killer known as the Green River Killer. He had murdered at least 49 runaway children and prostitutes during the 80s and 90s. However, when police searched Nance's home after his death, they found a series of photo booth pictures of him and Bachman. A strand of her hair was also found in his truck. On September 11th of 1985, the skeletal remains of Janet Lee Lucas, who was 23, were found in Missoula, Montana, with 2 .32 caliber bullets in her skull, roughly 3 miles from where Bachman was found. Investigators believe she died between 1983 and 1985. Her remains were unidentified until May of 21, when initially believed to be of Asian descent. Based on examination, her age range was between 18 and 35. She was between 4'10" and 5'2" inches, weighing anywhere from 90 to 110 pounds. She most likely had a history of smoking and had many fillings in her teeth, along with 2 root canals. After genetic genealogy was conducted from a successful DNA extraction, it was learned that Lucas originated from Spokane, Washington, having disappeared from Sandpoint, Idaho in the summer of 1983. It's unknown as to why and when she went to Montana. Like the others, Nance had not been definitively linked to the murder, but he is the only suspect. Nance is responsible for the murders of 34-year-old Michael Robert Shook and 32-year-old Teresa Lynn Shook on December 12, 1985 in Ravalli County, Montana. They were tied up in their home and stabbed to death. Nance entered their home armed with a gun at 9 p.m., introducing himself as Conan the Barbarian. This guy's wacko, dude.
He's nuts.
He started with demanding their money, firing a warning shot which actually hit Teresa in the leg. The post-mortem examination revealed that Nance tried to dig the bullet from her leg, leading to the belief that he hadn't intended to hit her, leading to the warning shot idea. After shooting her leg, he ordered their 4 children into the shared bedroom where he locked the door. There was a physical altercation where Michael suffered a blow to the head. He was at that point tied up and stabbed in his chest with a butcher knife. Teresa was forced upstairs where she was tied to the bed, where he raped her and stabbed her to death. Her body was found clothed except for her underwear, with a pillow over her face. A neighbor reported seeing a pickup truck matching the description of Nance's vehicle leaving the Shook's property. Roughly 2 hours later, Nance returned to the home, robbing the family of an elk statue, a stag-handled hunting knife, and a silver dollar collection. Satisfied that he got what he needed, he attempted to set the house on fire. He failed in his attempt as the fire did nothing more than smolder, never actually catching. He did, however, release cyanide gas into the home in his attempt, which slowly started to poison the children locked inside the room. The children did survive after being rescued by neighbors several hours later. The items stolen from the home were later found in Nance's home, and it was also discovered that Nance delivered a new couch to the Shook's home just days before the murder. Among the murders, there were several sexual harassment claims made against Nance during his time as a mover for Collins Furniture Department Store. His co-workers described him as an average guy. Several of the female customers complained about harassing phone calls they received after getting a delivery, singling out Nance as the caller.
That's so weird.
Right? Just delivering furniture, and then he just started spam calling them.
Hey, did you like me? I was moving your couch.
He had also taken photos of his female colleagues, which made them very uncomfortable. Nance was reported using a peephole that he, quote-unquote, found, blaming it on other members of the staff.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I found this people.
I found it.
I was like, might as well use it if it's there.
I didn't do it, so it's fine. But when the others were questioned, they all mentioned that Nance had shown it to them, not the other way around. So stupid. Like, what an idiot.
Look at this people.
He's like, guys, look at this. I know you put it in, but like, it's not your fault, right? On September 3rd, 1986, Nance attempted to murder husband and wife Douglas and Kristen Wells. Nance was working for the Wells Furniture Moving Company, where he engaged Doug in conversation at midnight in the front yard of his home. Doug demanded Nance tell him what he was doing in his bushes at that hour. I mean, it's fucking midnight. Where Nance mentioned he was passing by and had noticed somebody lurking outside the home. He asked to borrow a flashlight. Doug took Nance inside, where Nance struck Doug on the head, afterwards tying him and Kristen up. Nance stabbed Doug in the chest, leaving him to die in the basement, then proceeded to force Kristen upstairs to the second floor in her bedroom, where he planned to rape her. Doug, being the badass he is, managed to free himself, loading one single bullet into a rifle that he'd been repairing. He staggered, wounded, up the stairs to the bedroom where his wife was being assaulted, where Doug and Nance engaged in another altercation, ending with Doug shooting and incapacitating Nance. The Wells and Nance were rushed to the hospital, where the Wells would make a full recovery, yet Nance's wounds proved fatal, and he died the next day.
Yeet.
After this incident, authorities dug into Nance's past and other crimes, finding similarities with this attempted murder and the murders of the Shooks. Nance's wallet was found with a large collection of photos of Kristen in it. Some had been taken from the bushes along Kristen's jogging route. Dude, total fucking creeper. Others, found in a photo album, had notes such as, "I love you, I'm crazy about you, and I want you to live with me."
That's how
there you go.
Soon a woman. John Joubert from Nebraska. We'll be talking about him. From July 2nd, 1963 to July 17th to 1996, John Joubert had been convicted of murdering 3 boys in Maine and in Nebraska. Let's talk about his childhood. Joubert's parents had divorced when he was 6 years old, and he went to live with his mother in Lawrence, Massachusetts. He was not allowed to visit his father and grew to hate his controlling mother. In 1974, she moved the family to Portland, Maine. When he was 13, he stabbed a young girl with a pencil and felt sexually stimulated when she cried in pain. Also, he was named the Boy Scout Slayer. Anyways, the next day, he took a razor blade and slashed another girl as he biked past her. He was never caught for either attack. In another incident, he beat and nearly strangled another boy. He relished the power of bullying and began to stab or slash others. In the town of Back Cove, Maine, on August 22nd, 1982, 11-year-old Ricky Stetson had gone jogging. When he had not returned by dark, his parents called the police. The next day, a motorist saw the boy's body on the side of the I-295. The attacker appeared to have attempted to undress him and then stabbed and strangled him. A suspect was arrested for the murder, but his teeth did not match a bite mark on Stetson's body, and so he was released after a year and a half in custody. The case would go cold until January of 1984. Jannie Jo Elburl disappeared while delivering the Omaha World Herald newspaper on September 18, 1983, near Omaha, Nebraska. His brother, who also delivered the newspaper, had not seen him, but did remember being followed by a white man in a tan car the previous days. It was found that Elburl had only delivered 3 of the 70 newspapers. At his 4th delivery, his bicycle was discovered along with the rest of the newspapers. There appeared to be no sign of a struggle. Joubert would later describe how he had approached Elburl, drew a knife, and had then covered the boy's mouth with his hand. He then instructed the boy to follow him and took him to his truck. He then took him to a gravel road outside of town. After 3 days of searching, his body was finally discovered about 4 miles from where his bike was found. He had been stripped to his underwear, had his feet and hands bound, and mouth taped with surgical tape. Joubert had stabbed him 9 times. The crime came under the jurisdiction of the federal government of the United States, so the FBI was called in. The investigation followed several leads, including a young man who was arrested for molesting 2 boys about a week after the crime. He failed the polygraph test and had a false alibi, but did not fit the profile the FBI had created for the murderer.
I'm sorry, but like if you do anything with kids, you deserve a hard, horrible death.
Yeah.
Like I understand that's distasteful, but
Put them in a pit and they got to kill each other. He was released due to a lack of evidence. Other known pedophiles in the area were also questioned, but the case went cold due to the scarcity of evidence.
Of course. Jesus.
On December 2nd, Christopher Walden disappeared in Papillon, Nebraska, about 3 miles from where Elberl's body was found. Witnesses again said that they saw a white man in a tan car. Jobert said that he had driven up to Walden as he walked, showed him the sheath of his knife, and ordered him into the car. After driving to some railway lines out of town, he ordered Walden to strip to his underwear, which he did, but then Walden refused to lie down. After a brief struggle, Jobert outpowered and then stabbed him. Jobert cut Walden's throat so deep that he had almost been decapitated.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, bad man. Walden's body was found 2 days later, 5 miles from the town. Although the crimes were similar, there were differences. Walden had not been bound and had been concealed better and was thought to have been killed immediately after being abducted. So, on January 11, 1984, a preschool teacher in the area of the murders called police to say that she had seen a young man driving in the area. There are conflicting stories to what occurred, whether the car was loitering or just driving around. When the driver saw the teacher writing down his license plate, he stopped and threatened her before fleeing. The car was not tan, but was traced and found to be rented by John Jobert, an enlisted radar technician from Offutt Air Force Base. It turned out that his own car, which was a tan Nova sedan, was being repaired. A search warrant was issued, and rope consistent with that used to bind Danny Joe's Elberl was found in his apartment. The FBI were able to find that the unusual rope had been made from the United States military in South Korea. Under interrogation, Jobert admitted getting it from the scoutmaster and the troop that he was an assistant in.
Okay, well, let's jump over to Nevada. And like this one, I thought for sure like it'd have some kind of like mob mentality, like murder sort of thing.
Yeah, we just cinder blocks and
Carol Cole. Carol Cole was born on May 9th, 1938 in Sioux City, Iowa, and was the second son of Laverne Cole and Vesta Cole. His younger sister was born in 1939, and soon after, the family moved to California, where Laverne found work in a shipyard. Shortly after, Laverne fought in World War II, and while he was away, his wife had several affairs.
Well, you were at war, and, we had a milkman, and a mailman, and the UPS guy, and
while she had several affairs, she often took Carol along, threatening to beat him if he had ever told his dad about it. Isn't that sad? Like, hey, we're gonna go to Tim's house, and you better not tell your dad about this. Just sit and watch cartoons. She was emotionally abusive to Cole, often dressing him as a girl, where he was teased at school about his girly name. So this is kind of wild. At the young age of 8, Cole retaliated against one of his classmates named Dwayne, who was the same age as Cole, by drowning him in a lake in Richmond, California. He killed someone at 8 years old.
Just a regular retaliation.
Just murdered, drowned him in a lake. The death was ruled an accident by authorities until Cole confessed many years later in an autobiography that he wrote in prison. During a press interview, Cole said, "I was primed. I had made the mental commitment that I was going to get even with my mother, and things just built up and became an obsession." Cole committed several petty crimes as a teen, frequently being arrested for drunkenness and minor thefts. After high school, he joined the U.S. Army, yet was given a bad conduct discharge in 1958 for stealing pistols. In 1960, Cole attacked 2 couples that were in parked cars on a lover's lane. Shortly after this, Cole called police in Richmond, California himself, where he had been living, telling them that he was plagued with violent fantasies of strangling women. It's like the first guy you talked about, man. Like, he's trying to get himself, checked into these places. This would have him spend time in various mental hospitals over the next 3 years. During his stay in the final one, which was Stockton State Hospital, Dr. Weiss wrote, "He seems to be afraid of the female figure and cannot have intercourse with her first, but must kill her before he can do it." His release was approved by Weiss on April of 1963, despite the fact that hospital staff diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder. After his release, Cole moved to Dallas, Texas, where his brother Richard resided. It was here that he met and married an alcoholic stripper named Billy Whitworth. Yet this didn't change how he viewed women. The marriage ended 2 years later when Cole burned down a motel, claiming that Whitworth was having sex with other men there. This landed him in prison for arson. When he was released from prison, he attempted to strangle an 11-year-old girl in Missouri. He was arrested again and sentenced to another 5 years in prison. After this sentence ended, he landed in Nevada, where he again attempted to strangle 2 women. He checked himself into yet another mental hospital at this point, where the doctors noted his murderous fantasies, yet elected not to detain him. He was then given a ticket back to San Diego. So he's checked himself in now several times, and they just keep letting him walk out.
You're
like, I don't know what else you can do, right? But, Lord. Cole's first victim was Essie Louise Buck, an adult whom he picked up in a San Diego tavern on May 7th, 1971. He strangled her to death in his car, then drove around with her body in the trunk of his car before eventually dumping it. Only 2 weeks later, he killed an unidentified woman, burying her in a wooded area. He would later claim that they had proven themselves unfaithful to their husbands, which reminded him of his adulterous mother.
I thought he was going to go with the alcoholic stripper. I totally misread that.
Yeah. Cole married barmaid Diana Faye Younglove Paschal in July of 1973, who was also an alcoholic. The two would argue and fight regularly, which would cause Cole to be on his own for several days at a time. In these moments of isolation, he would commit murders, including one unfortunate woman who he was said to cannibalize to a degree.
Oh my God.
So he would fight with his alcoholic barmaid wife, and then he would leave, and he'd just go murder.
He'd eat people.
And eat this one person. And it's only claimed. It's not been proven. In September of 1979, Cole strangled Paschal to death. It was a suspicious neighbor who phoned the police a few days later. They arrived to find her body wrapped in a blanket, stuffed in a closet. However, they pinned the cause on her heavy drinking, and Cole was released without a charge after some questioning. Like, just show up, she's wrapped in a carpet in the closet, and they're like, oh, she must have drank herself to death. All right, you're good. At this point, Cole had left San Diego and started moving around again. In 1979, he met Marie Cushman at a bar in Las Vegas, and that same evening, they went to a motel where they had sex, and he killed her by strangulation afterwards. After his visit in Vegas, he returned to Dallas, fatally strangling 3 more women in November of 1980. He was only a suspect in the second murder, yet found on the scene of the third. He was then arrested and held in custody. It was here that the police came to the conclusion that the victim had most likely died of natural causes, and Cole was about to be ruled out as a suspect before he confessed, not only to this murder, but all the other murders as well. So he was literally about to be released because they're like, oh, they must have died of natural causes while he's in the area. And he's like, no, I killed them all. So like, let me do your job for you.
Why do so many people die from natural causes around you? He's like, son of a bitch, I did it.
He's like, are you that stupid?
She was rolled in a carpet.
I strangled her to death. It wasn't the drinking. She may have been drunk, but I killed her. He's doing the job for them, dude.
You're driving me crazy, just like my alcoholic stripper ex.
And my mother. So he confessed to all these murders. He had made claims that he murdered at least 14 other women over the prior 9 years, though he added there may have been more, but he simply couldn't remember the exact number as he was usually drunk himself when these crimes were committed. On April 9th, 1981, Cole was convicted of 3 of the murders that had been committed in Texas. He was sentenced to life at the Huntsville prison. In 1984, his mother had died and his attitude reportedly changed. He agreed to face further murder charges that were filed in Nevada, even with the looming death penalty that it would cause. He was extradited to Nevada in February of 1984, where he was tried and convicted of strangulation deaths of 2 women in 1977 and 1979, and he was sentenced to death in October of 1984. When this sentence was passed, Cole had 2 words to say. Thanks, Judge. At some point before his execution, he apparently converted to Catholicism. On the day of his execution, a group of anti-death campaigners, including the American Civil Liberties Union, The United Methodist Church of Reno and other death row inmates gathered to have his sentence commuted. However, Cole protested. For his last meal request, Cole ordered jumbo fried shrimp, French fries, salad with French dressing, and Boston clam chowder. It's a hell of a meal.
Yeah.
The night before, he had asked for Kentucky Fried Chicken, but the guards could only get chicken nuggets, since he couldn't have food with bones. Cole was executed by lethal injection at Nevada State Prison on December 6, 1985 at 2:10 a.m. Like, I didn't know they were killing people at 2:10 a.m., dude.
Yeah.
His brain had been removed hours after his execution and has been studied for abnormalities at the University of Nevada, Reno Medical School.
The last one we'll cover is from New Hampshire, which is Christopher Wilder. Born March 13th, 1945, Christopher Wilder was a product of an international marriage between an American naval officer and his Australian wife. A sickly child from the beginning, Wilder was given last rites as an infant. 2 years later, he had nearly drowned in a swimming pool at the age of 3. He suffered convulsions while riding with his parents in the family car and had to be resuscitated. By his teens, the boy had problems of a different sort. At 17, in Sydney, Wilder had a group of friends were charged with gang raping a girl on the beach. He pled guilty to carnal knowledge and received 1 year's probation, with a provision for mandatory counseling. The program included group therapy and electroshock treatments, but it seemed to have little effect. Wilder married at age 23, but the union lasted only a few days. His bride complained of sexual abuse and finally left him after finding panties, not her own, and photographs of naked women in a briefcase Wilder carried in his car. That guy's fucking weird, dude. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Who does that? Anyways, in November 1969, he used nude photographs to extort sex from an Australian student nurse. She complained to the police, but the charges were ultimately dropped when she refused to testify in court. Australia was growing too hot for Wilder. He moved to the United States, settling in southern Florida. He prospered in the fields of construction and electrical contracting, earning or borrowing enough money to finance fast cars and luxurious bachelor pads, complete with hot tubs and a private photo studio.
Oh, so he's actually going for the luxurious cars, not the logging trucks.
Yeah, at least he's not stealing logging trucks.
There's a difference.
The good life visibly agreed with Wilder, but it did not fill his other hidden needs. In March 1971, at Pompano Beach, Wilder was picked up on a charge of soliciting women to pose for nude photos. He entered a plea of guilty to disturbing the peace and escaped with a small fine. 6 years later, in October 1977, he coerced a female high school student into oral sex, threatening to beat her if she refused, and he was jailed a second time.
God, this man.
Yeah. Wilder admitted the crime to his therapist, but confidential interviews are inadmissible in court, and he was later acquitted. On June 21st, 1980, he lured a teenage girl into his car with promises of a modeling job, then drove her to a rural area where she was raped. A guilty plea to charges of attempted sexual battery earned him 5 years probation, with further therapy ordered by the court. Following his last arrest in Florida, the self-made man complained of suffering from blackouts. Visiting his parents in Australia, Wilder was accused of kidnapping two 15-year-old girls from the beach in New South Wales on December 28, 1982, forcing them to pose for pornographic snapshots. Traced through the license number of his rented car, Wilder was arrested on December 29th, charged with kidnapping and indecent assault. His family posted a $350,000 bail, and Wilder was permitted to return to the United States. His trial scheduled for May 7, 1983. Legal delays postponed the case, but Wilder was scheduled to appear in court for a hearing on April 3, 1984. He never made it. On February 6, Rosario Gonzalez, 20, disappeared from her job at the Miami Grand Prix. Chris Wilder was driving as a contestant that day, and witnesses recall her leaving with a man who fit Wilder's description. Her body has never been found. On March 4th, 23-year-old Elizabeth Kenyon vanished after work from the school where she taught in Coral Gables. She was seen that afternoon with Wilder at a local gas station. and his name was found in her address book. Kenyon's parents remember her speaking of Wilder's as a real gentleman, unlike the various photographers who asked if she would model in the nude. As in the February case, no trace of Kenyon has been found. Wilder celebrated his 39th birthday on March 13th, treating himself to a peculiar gift of a 1973 Chrysler. 3 days later, the Miami Herald reported that a Boynton Beach race driver was wanted for questioning in the disappearance of 2 local women. Wilder was not named in the story, but he got the point. Missing his scheduled therapy on March 17th, he met with his business partner the following night. "I am not going to jail," he vowed tearfully. "I'm not going to do it." Packing his car, Wilder dropped off his dogs at a kennel and drove out of town, headed north. Indian Arbor lies 2 hours north of Boynton Beach. On March 19th, Terry Ferguson, 21, disappeared from a local shopping mall where witnesses remember seeing Wilder. Her body was recovered 4 days later from Polk County Canal. On March 20th, Wilder abducted a university co-ed from a shopping mall in Tallahassee, driving her across the state line to Bainbridge, Georgia. There, in a cheap motel, she was raped repeatedly and tortured with electric shocks, her eyelids smeared with superglue.
Good God.
Wilder fled after his captive managed to lock herself in the bathroom, screaming and pounding on the walls to draw attention from the other guests. The killer touched down next to Beaumont, Texas. Terry Walden, 24, informed her husband on March 21st that a bearded man had approached her between classes at a local university, soliciting her for a modeling job. She thanked him and declined the offer, but the conversation struck a chord of memory when Terry disappeared March 23rd. Her body, torn by multiple stab wounds, was recovered from a canal 3 days later. On March 25th, 21-year-old Suzanne Logan disappeared from a shopping mall in Oklahoma City. Her body was found the next day, floating in the Milford Reservoir near Manhattan, Kansas. Raped and stabbed, the victim had apparently been tortured prior to death. Cheryl Bonaventura was the next to die. Abducted from a shopping mall in Grand Junction, Colorado on March 29th, another shopper placed Wilder in the mall, soliciting women for modeling jobs, and he was seen with Cheryl at a nearby restaurant that afternoon. She joined the missing list as Wilder worked his way across the country killing when he paused to rest. On April 1st, 17-year-old Michelle Korfman vanished from a fashion show at the Meadows Mall in Las Vegas, Nevada. Snapshots taken from the Time show Wilder smiling from the sidelines, watching as the teenage girls parade before him in their mini skirts.
Disgusting fucking freak.
At last, it was enough. Linked with 3 murders, 1 kidnapping, and 4 disappearances, Wilder was described by the FBI spokesman as a significant danger. His name was added to the Bureau's 10 most wanted list on April 3rd, 1984. The following day, he abducted a 16-year-old Tina Marie Rocio in Torrance, California, raping her that night and through successive evenings as they stayed in various motels, working their way eastward. Subjected to threats and abuse, living continually in the shadows of death, Rocio agreed to help Wilder find other victims as he continued his long flight to nowhere. On April 10th, Donnet Wilt was lured away from a shopping mall in Merrillville, Indiana, raped and tortured through the course of the day and the next. Wilder tried to murder her on April 12th, stabbing Donnet and leaving her for dead outside of Rochester, New York, and she managed to survive and stagger to the nearest highway, where a passing motorist discovered her and drove her to the hospital. Wilder's final victim was Beth Dodge, abducted near Victor, New York, on April 12th and shot to death in a nearby gravel pit. Following the murder, Wilder drove his teenage captive to Boston Logan Airport, purchasing a one-way ticket to Los Angeles and seeing her off at the gate. Wilder's sudden attack of compassion remains unexplained, but he wasted no time in searching out another victim. On April 13th, he brandished his gun at a woman near Beverly, Massachusetts, but she fled on foot, unharmed. Continuing to aimlessly hunt, the killer stopped for gas that afternoon at Colebrook, New Hampshire, unaware that he had reached the end of his run.
So, like, that's crazy, though. He had this girl that was with him for several months, and he just decided, hey, go.
Yeah.
Put her on a plane.
He's like, see ya. Passing by the service station, state troopers Wayne Fortier and Leo Jellison recognized Wilder's car from FBI descriptions. Approaching the vehicle, they called out to Wilder and saw him brake for the car, diving inside as he went for the pistol. Jellison leaped on the fugitive's back, struggling for the .357 Magnum. The two shots ring out. The first passed through Wilder and pierced Jellison's chest, lodging in his liver.
Oof.
The second snuffed out Wilder's life, resulting in what a coroner termed cardiac
obliteration.
Cardiac obliteration.
Holy shit.
That's good, though. I like that. Wilder's violent death, ironically, did not resolve the tangled case.
Died by cardiac obliteration. That sounds painful.
Cheryl Bonaventura's body was recovered in Utah on May 3rd, the victim of a point-blank gunshot wound. Michelle Korfman was found in the Angeles National Forest on May 11th, but another month would pass before she was identified. Her family's fears were confirmed. No trace has yet been found of Wilder's earlier victims in Miami. With his death, Chris Wilder was inevitably linked with other unsolved crimes. A pair of girls, aged 10 and 12, identifies his mugshot as the likeness of a man who snatched them from the park in Boynton Beach in June of 1983 and forced them to do bad things. His name was likewise linked with other deaths and disappearances across 2 decades in Australia and America. So it's kind of good that he was shot to a violent end.
Good.
You know, I'm happy with that.
God, dude. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up part 6 of our serial killer tour around the United States. Again, if you do have an idea for a series you'd like us to cover, send it in, or just a single topic, whatever. entertheabysspod@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook. But as we wrap up the episode, a huge shout out, as always, to our 9 paid supporters of the show: Claytor, Lord of Soup, Curtis and Laura, Jackson, Modelo Time, Laura, Mothman, Devin, Conklin family, and Lou. Your consistent paid support is definitely helping us get closer and closer to having video on the show, along with our travels to the Clown Motel once we hit the inevitable 500 supporters.
We're 80 subs away on YouTube, so if you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. As always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.